Maria Torres de la Vega wakes before the first light touches the sky. Her room is calm and cool. She sits up on a soft bed, her silk sheets falling around her. As she stretches, she looks out through the tall windows at the ocean below. The water is dark blue and calm. A soft breeze moves the curtains. She smiles to herself. This day will be like many others, full of small moments that matter. She rises and steps onto the polished floor. Her slippers whisper across the smooth surface. She walks into a dressing room filled with clothes her family has worn for decades. She chooses a simple white blouse and blue jeans. Even though her wardrobe holds many fine dresses and jewelry, she prefers clothes that let her move easily. She thinks of the children she will meet today, and her heart warms. She wants them to see her as a friend, not a billionaire. In the spacious hallway, a marble staircase leads down to the living room. Family portraits hang on the walls. She pauses by a painting of her grandmother, a woman who built much of the family fortune. Her grandmother always said money means little if you cannot give it away with a kind heart. Maria touches the frame and carries the words in her mind. On her way downstairs, she picks up a leather bag by the front door. Inside are art supplies, notebooks, and a few snacks. She always carries a little something for the children at the youth center. She leaves a note on the hall table for the house manager. Gone to youth center. Back by noon. Then she steps outside. The morning is cool by the ocean. The sun has not fully risen, but the sky glows pink. Maria walks across the manicured lawn. A gardener is trimming rose bushes, and a fountain makes soft sounds behind her. She breathes deeply, feeling peace. Her vintage convertible waits gleaming under the soft light. The engine purrs as she slides into the driver's seat. She pulls out of the driveway and onto a quiet street. Palm trees sway on either side. Birds call in the air. Maria thinks about the new art class she has planned. She hopes the children will feel free to paint their dreams. She imagines a small boy drawing his family laughing around a dinner table. She imagines a girl painting a bright rainbow. These images bring a smile to her face. Along the way, she sees people greeting her. A neighbor waves from her own car. A security guard at the corner nods politely, though her face is known in this area. She likes how simple these mornings feel. No one has to treat her as anyone special. She can be just Maria, someone who cares, unaware of her world of privilege. Two officers in a police car drive slowly down the street. They are short on time after responding to a call about a broken window at a home nearby. Their shift started early, and they have not had a break. They chat in low voices about pizza plans for lunch. One of them glances at a small screen in the patrol car. Text from dispatch says to look for a dark car matching a report. They do not know how wrong things will soon become. Maria turns off the main road and onto a quieter lane. The youth center stands ahead, a single-story building, painted in warm tones. A sign reads Hope for All Youth Center. The windows show colorful paintings from past workshops. She parks in a spot near the entrance. She steps out, her bag over her shoulder, and locks the car. Her heart is light, ready for the day's work. She walks up to the glass doors and pushes them open. A bell chimes. Inside, the center smells of fresh paint and paper. Tables are set with brushes and palettes. Posters from last week's art show hang on the walls. She pauses for a moment to breathe in the familiar scents and sounds. Then she smiles and steps into the room. A few children look up and wave. Maria returns the wave and says, "Good morning, everyone." Her voice is gentle but clear. She greets each child by name. She kneels to tie a young girl's shoelace and shows a boy how to mix blue and yellow paint. Her movements are calm and sure. She lets the children take the lead. She is here to help them express themselves. In another corner, a small group waits for her instructions. She tells them they can paint whatever makes them happy. A hush falls over the room as they begin. The sound of brushes on paper fills the air. Maria moves from table to table, offering praise and small tips. Her kindness makes the children smile. Outside, the two officers in the patrol car spot her vintage convertible. It matches the description they saw on their screen. Without checking carefully, they decide it could be the car they need. They step out, hands hovering over their belts. The morning seems calm to everyone, but the officers feel tension from the earlier call. A security guard at the center's entrance sees the officers walking toward Maria. He knows her face from security cameras and the many visits she's made. He frowns. He reaches for his radio, but pauses, hoping this will be a calm encounter. Maria is by a table, handing brushes to a child. She notices the officers approaching and turns to greet them with a smile. One officer clears his throat and raises his voice. "Step away from the table and face us," he says. His voice is hard, too sharp for the gentle scene. Maria stands slowly, her warm smile fading. The children stop painting. She holds her hands out, open and calm. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asks softly. The other officer points at the bag on her arm. "We need to search that." He takes a step forward. Maria's heart skips. "This is mine," she says. "I have all my own art supplies in here." She touches the bag with care. The first officer steps closer. "You match the description?" He says, "Don't move." Maria's breath comes faster. A child watches with wide eyes. Maria looks to the officers' faces, searching for a sign. She sees uncertainty. She sees a doubt that they fight to hide. She clears her throat. "You must see my ID," she says. "I can prove who I am." Her voice trembles only a little. Inside, she feels fear, but she stays calm for the children. At that moment, the security guard moves forward and shows the officers the live feed on his phone from just minutes ago. He points to Maria entering the center. "She's been here since dawn," he says. The officers glance at each other. Confusion flashes in their eyes. Maria turns toward the guard, relief and hurt mixed on her face. She thinks of the children, and a beam of protectiveness warms her chest. The first officer pulls back slightly. He radios in his car. A sergeant is on the way. Maria touches her bag and breathes deep. She thinks of the morning wind, the calm ocean, the happy art space. She reminds herself of her purpose. She smiles at the children, who watch in silence. She says softly, "It's okay. Let's keep painting." In these first 5 minutes, Maria felt every emotion. She felt pride in her work, fear from being misunderstood, relief when her truth came out. She saw the children's wide eyes and felt their trust. She knew this morning was already special, for reasons she could not yet name. And though the day was just beginning, her heart was full of hope for what would come next. Maria felt her heart pound as the security guard's live video replay showed her calm walk into the youth center. She let out a small breath and turned back to the children. They watched her with wide eyes. Brushes hovered over paper. For a moment, every hand in the room froze. Then she smiled gently and said, "Let's bring our paintings to life." Her voice was soft but steady. She reached for her bag and handed out fresh sheets of paper in extra colors. The room felt warm again. Behind her, the two officers stood. Awkwardly, their stern faces softened as they studied Maria's calm expression. The taller officer spoke into his shoulder mic. "Sergeant, can you come here?" A crackle of static answered him. Within minutes, a uniformed sergeant appeared at the doorway. He was a woman with careful eyes and a measured way of walking. She carried a notepad and a poised air. The other children at nearby tables looked up. Maria stayed by her art supplies. Ready to speak, the sergeant scanned the room. She saw the brushes, the bright paintings, the small hands busy with color. Then she noticed Maria, standing tall, despite the handcuffs still hanging from her wrists. The sergeant signaled to the two officers. They moved aside. The sergeant approached Maria and asked quietly, "Ma'am, are you hurt?" Maria shook her head. "No, thank you," she said. Her voice had only a faint tremor. The sergeant glanced at the security guard. He nodded toward the phone again. Sergeant looked at her own tablet, where the dispatch report appeared. She tapped the screen and frowned. "This car description was vague," she said to the officers. "Dark convertible. Could be many things. They said the driver might be stuck in the robbery." She turned to Maria. "I am so sorry for this trouble," she said. Maria's eyes flinched at the apology. It was kind and true. She said, "Thank you." The sergeant motioned to the first officer. "Remove her cuffs now." A soft click followed as the handcuffs fell away. Maria rubbed her wrists where the metal had been. Her skin felt tender. She bowed her head for a moment, gathering herself. Then she looked up at the sergeant. "I understand mistakes happen," she said. The sergeant gave her a gentle nod. Around them, the children began to stir. Brushes touched paper again, and the soft sound of paint strokes filled the air. Mariah stepped forward and guided a little boy's hand as he chose a bright red. The officers watched quietly, unsure whether to stay or go. One officer cleared his throat. He held out a folded piece of paper, Maria's driver's license, and a charity ID card inside a plastic sleeve. He said, "Ma'am, here's your ID. I hope you can forgive us." Maria took the sleeve, her fingers brushing the paper. She opened it and saw her name printed clearly, along with her photo smiling back. She folded it neatly and placed it in her bag. "Of course," she said. "I hope you will learn from this." The sergeant placed a hand on the officer's shoulder and guided them both toward the door. Maria watched as they walked away. She felt a swirl of emotions: relief, sadness, and an odd kind of hope. She returned to the art tables and knelt beside a girl painting a rainbow. "You have such bright colors," she said. The girl's face lit up. The other officer stayed at the doorway, watching the children at work. His gaze softened as he saw their laughter return and brushes dance. Across the page, outside the center, phones still recorded. A passerby had caught the entire scene on video: Maria being handcuffed, the sergeant arriving, the apology, and the moment she knelt back with the children. Within minutes, the footage spread across social media. Hashtags like "Justice for Maria" and hashtag "Billionaire Kindness" trended. Maria did not see the posts yet. Inside her art room, she saw only the hopeful faces of the children. As the morning light grew stronger, the room felt like a small beacon of color amid confusion. Maria guided the children in mixing new shades. She whispered words of encouragement and listened to their stories. A small boy named Javier told her he wanted to be an artist when he grew up. Maria knelt and looked him in the eye. "Keep painting your dreams," she told him. "The world needs your colors." Javier smiled and dipped his brush in bright yellow. Outside, the sergeant called her captain, spoke in low tones, explaining the error and the officer's actions. She asked for extra counseling for all three officers, emphasizing bias training and empathy exercises. She ended the call with a promise to review policies, so no one else would feel the same humiliation. Back in the art room, Maria heard the final click of the front door as the officers left. She stood and stretched, her back stiff from kneeling. She looked around at the small masterpieces drying on the tables. Reds, blues, greens, and purples, each child's unique view of the world. Maria felt tears prick her eyes. Not from fear, but from gratitude. These children trusted her again. She felt the weight of their trust and smiled. A volunteer from the center approached. He whispered, "They want to interview you outside." Maria nodded and wiped her hands on her jeans. She took a last look at the art room, its walls alive with color, and whispered a goodbye. Then she stepped through the doors into a new world of flashing cameras and bright questions. She felt calm. She had faced fear and turned it into hope. She was ready for whatever came next. Maria stepped out of the youth center and into the bright morning light. Reporters and cameras lined the sidewalk. Microphones pointed at her as she walked toward them. Her heart beat a little faster, but she stood tall. She carried herself with calm confidence. A small crowd of supporters had gathered, many holding signs that read, "Respect everyone" and "End racial profiling." Their voices formed a gentle hum of hope. A young reporter raised her microphone and asked, "Ms. Torres de la Vega, how do you feel after what happened?" Maria paused. She looked at the children's paintings, still wet with paint, drying on the tables behind her. She thought of their trusting eyes and bright smiles. She remembered the fear that had gripped her wrists when the handcuffs clicked shut. But she also felt the kindness of the sergeant who freed her, and the courage of the security guard who stood up for truth. She took a deep breath and spoke in a calm voice. "I feel thankful," she said. thankful that no one was hurt and that justice moved quickly. I also feel hopeful that this moment will help us all learn to see each other with kindness. The crowd murmured their approval. Cameras clicked. Maria gave a gentle nod and stepped back to let her lawyer speak. Her lawyer, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward. She introduced herself and spoke clearly. "We are looking into a civil rights claim," she said. "My client deserves an apology and full accountability. We will work with the city to make sure nothing like this happens again." The lawyer's words were firm but measured. Maria watched the lawyer's lips move and felt pride. She knew her lawyer would protect her rights. Porters peppered her with more questions about policy changes and training. Maria answered each, one with care. She spoke of bias training, community outreach, and how the police could work with local centers to build trust. She emphasized listening and respect. She said, "We all have to learn to pause before judgment." The crowd listened, some nodding, some wiping happy tears from their eyes. After the press conference, Maria walked slowly to her car. She saw her vintage convertible parked at the curb. It looked small amid the sea of people and cameras. She slipped inside and closed the door. The engine purred. She felt relief wash over her. Inside the car, she gave herself a moment to breathe. She closed her eyes and let her mind drift back to the art room. She remembered little faces, holding brushes, spilling paint on their hands. She felt a warm glow at their trust in her. She drove toward the City Hall building where the mayor had requested a meeting. Along the way, she saw billboards of her own charity work. One read Maria's art workshops change lives. Another read Giving Back with Heart. She smiled. And how the city celebrated her kind work. But today, the city's promise would be tested. She hoped the leaders would listen and take action. At City Hall, she entered a grand lobby with tall marble columns. A young aide guided her to a conference room on the second floor. The mayor, a woman known for her calm voice and thoughtful words, waited with city council members, greeted Maria warmly. The mayor shook her hand and invited her to sit. Maria chose the chair opposite the mayor and looked around at the serious faces. The mayor began. "Torres de la Vega, I want to offer my personal apology. What happened to you was wrong. We will take steps to address this." Maria nodded. She could see the mayor meant it. The mayor spoke of reviewing police training, community panels, and better communication. She outlined a plan for a citizen review board with members from neighborhoods and youth centers. To watch police actions and offer feedback, Maria listened. Carefully, when the mayor paused, Maria spoke. She said, "Thank you for your apology and for these steps. I suggest we also involve young people. They need a voice in shaping how we teach respect and fairness." The council members nodded. One of them wrote notes. Another smiled and said, "That is an excellent idea." Maria felt hopeful. She realized her experience could spark real change, not just words. After the meeting, Maria left City Hall with a sense of purpose. She called her assistant on the car's speaker. "Please schedule a workshop next weekend for kids and officers together," she said. "We can bring them here to paint side by side." Her assistant agreed eagerly. Maria hung up, thinking of paintbrushes and badges, children and officers. Learning from each other? Later that afternoon, Maria returned to the youth center. The children had finished their paintings and were ready for a small art show. The tables were set up outside under colorful tents. Parents, neighbors, and a few police officers stood by the artwork. The officers wore fresh uniforms and uncertain smiles. Maria felt her heart lighten. She approached a tall officer and offered him a paintbrush. "Would you like to try?" she asked. He hesitated, then dipped the brush into a pot of blue paint and made a broad stroke on the canvas. The children cheered. Maria walked among the paintings. Each piece told a story families. Laughing, flowers blooming, hope shining. She saw one painting where the child had painted two hands reaching out to each other. She knelt beside the young artist. "This is beautiful," she said. "It feels like peace." The child blushed. Maria placed her hand gently on the canvas. "Yes," she agreed quietly. "Peace and understanding." A reporter from the local news approached her again. "Miss Torres de la Vega, will you keep working on these community events?" she asked. Maria smiled and answered, yes. Art can heal hearts. It can open minds. She gestured to the officer's painting and the children cheering. Look at this, she said softly. Here, everyone comes together as equals. The sun began to set, turning the sky pink and gold. The art show wound down. Maria gathered the paintings and helped pack them into her car, waved goodbye to the children, who waved back. She closed the center's doors and walked back to her car. Her wrists were free, but she felt a new sense of responsibility. She thought of the morning when fear had gripped her. Now she felt hope grip her heart. On her way home, she stopped at her family's mansion. She climbed the marble steps and entered the quiet house. The halls were calm. She placed the paintings on a long table in the foyer as a reminder of the day's events. She poured herself a cup of tea in the kitchen. She sat at a small table and held the warm mug in her hands. She thought of the costumes the children had, worn in their paintings, rainbows, suns, forests. She thought of the officers' painting too, their faces soft with concentration. She sipped her tea and felt a joyful tiredness. That night, she wrote in her journal. She described the fear she felt when the handcuffs closed. She described the kindness of those who stood by her. She wrote about the plans for City Hall and the art show with officers and children painting together. She wrote of hope, of change, and of community. She closed the journal and laid it on her bedside table. Before sleep, she looked out at the ocean through her window. The moonlight glittered on the water. She whispered a silent thanks for safety and for the chance to make a difference. She knew tomorrow would bring new challenges. But she also knew she would face them with courage, kindness, and art. With that comforting thought, she closed her eyes and drifted into a peaceful night's sleep. Weeks passed after the art show, and the city's promise began to take shape. Early one morning, Maria received a message from the Independent Review Board. They had completed their report on the two officers. Maria read their findings with a steady heart. The board noted several past complaints about both officers. They said the officers had shown a pattern of quick judgments and poor respect for the people they served. The report recommended they be dismissed from the force and barred from future law enforcement roles. Maria felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that justice was moving forward. Sadness that two careers would end. That same day, the police commissioner called a press briefing. Maria watched the live broadcast on her phone as uniformed officers stood behind a podium. The commissioner spoke in a firm voice. He thanked Maria for her calm courage and for helping the city see its blind spots. Then he announced the firing of the two officers. He said the department would honor their past service, but could not ignore their mistakes. He promised a full effort to rebuild trust with every neighborhood. Maria felt a warm glow. She thought of the children's paintings still hanging in her foyer. Each brushstroke had become part of something larger than art. After the briefing, the commissioner invited Maria to a private meeting. She arrived at the precinct where the walls were lined with photographs of officers helping in the community. The commissioner greeted her with a nod. "Thank you for your patience and your voice," he said. "Your story sparked change." Maria thanked him in return. She spoke of her hope that the reforms would last. She suggested regular meetings between officers and neighborhood leaders. The commissioner agreed and said they would begin next month. Maria left the precinct feeling that her role as a bridge between groups was just beginning. Meanwhile, the two former officers faced their own challenges. One officer, named Brooks, tried to find work at a private security firm. But when the news of his firing spread, the firm withdrew its offer. He sent out many resumes to other security jobs. Some companies declined to interview him, others never replied. He realized that his actions on that morning would follow him. He felt a slow ache of regret each time an email bounced back. He thought of the handcuffs clicking shut and of the doubt in Maria's calm eyes. He knew he had lost more than a job. He had lost trust. The other officer, named Carter, reached out to a community center in a neighboring town, hoping to volunteer. He knew he needed to learn respect and empathy. The center's director agreed to meet him, but asked for an honest conversation first. Carter sat in a small office, his uniform gone, his badge handed in. His heart pounded as the director asked him why he wanted to help. Carter spoke quietly of his regret, said he wanted to learn how to treat everyone with dignity. The director agreed to let him volunteer, but only if he attended every training session and listened with an open mind. Carter nodded. He felt a flicker of hope. Back in Beverly Hills, the mayor's office moved forward with reforms. A new bias awareness program began at the police academy. Recruits spent days listening to real stories of people who had been hurt by quick judgments. They painted on canvas, too, guided by art therapists. City Hall also launched a hotline where anyone could report concerns about bias. Reports no longer went only to internal affairs, they went to independent reviewers. First, Maria was invited to serve on the review panel. She accepted, humbled by the chance to help shape fair practices. On a warm afternoon, Maria walked through the same neighborhood where she had been cuffed. She carried a folder of notes from the first community meeting. Neighbors greeted her with smiles. Some patted her shoulder. Across the street, the youth center's new mural caught her eye. It showed children holding hands around a globe, painted in bright colors. Underneath, someone had added words. "Together, we rise." Maria's heart swelled. She remembered the fear in that morning and felt gratitude for how the community had come together. That evening, Maria hosted a small dinner for families, police representatives, and community leaders. Long tables were set under twinkling lights in her garden. The table held simple dishes, fresh salads, roasted vegetables, bread. People chatted across the table, sharing their hopes and fears. A father told a sergeant about how his son feared. The police sergeant listened and promised to visit the boys' school. A police captain thanked a mother for her trust and asked for ideas to make patrols kinder. Maria moved between groups, bringing gentle conversation and warm smiles. She felt the soft hum of human connection. Later that night, Maria walked alone by the ocean. The moonlight made the water sparkle. She thought of how a moment of shame had become the seed for change. She thought of the officers who lost jobs and of those who found new paths. She thought of the art room, the press room, the city hall chambers in this quiet shore. She felt a calm joy, knowing that her own calm had helped turn fear into action. At home, she sat at her desk and wrote to her grandmother's old journal. She wrote of trust broken and trust rebuilt. She wrote of people who learned to pause and listen. She wrote of community stronger than fear. She closed the journal and placed it on a small shelf beside her childhood photos. She whispered, "Thank you," to the grandmother who had taught her kindness. In the days that followed, the story of that morning lived on. Children at the youth center painted new murals. School teachers invited officers to read stories in classrooms. Neighborhood block parties became a chance for residents and police to greet one another over food and laughter. Maria visited each event, always with her gentle smile and open heart. She never wore her silk blouses or her fine jewelry. She wore simple shirts and jeans, the same way she had that first morning. She wanted to remind everyone that kindness and respect are the real prizes of any story. Months later, a new recruit named Santos stood in the academy's art therapy room. He painted a bright sun with open arms. He listened to a panel of community members, including Maria, speak of real lives changed by bias. Santos thought of the sun he painted, warm, welcoming, shining on all. He understood that day that being an officer meant more than enforcing rules. It meant serving people with dignity. He looked at Maria during the panel and saw her nod in approval. He smiled and returned to his painting. On the anniversary of Maria's experience, the city held a small ceremony at the youth center. The mayor, the commissioner, community leaders, and families gathered under the mural of children around the globe. The mayor spoke of how one morning had changed many lives. She spoke of Maria's courage and of the city's promise kept. Smiled softly as the crowd clapped. She knew the work would never completely finish. But she also knew that every brushstroke of kindness would help write a new story. One where everyone could live without fear and with respect. That night, Maria sat by her window, watching the stars. She held a small notebook filled with new ideas, workshops, murals, listening circles. She penned a plan to take art therapy to senior centers next. She thought of how art had helped children, how it had helped officers, how it had helped her. She closed her notebook and whispered too. "The night, let art be our guide." Then she turned off the light and drifted into sleep, ready for whatever the next morning would bring. Maria woke early, as she often did, before the sun rose. She sat on the edge of her bed and felt the soft white sheets beneath her. She thought of the day before, when families and officers came together to celebrate progress. She thought of the mural that now covered the youth center's front wall, its bright children holding hands around a globe. The words "Together we rise" glowed under the morning light. Maria smiled, remembering the pride on the faces of children and police officers alike. She dressed quietly, choosing a light blue shirt and jeans, and tied her hair back so it would not fall into her face. Today she planned to visit the senior center where she hoped art therapy could bring the same healing she saw with the young children and the police. She stepped into her vintage convertible and drove down the familiar road by the ocean. The sky was pale pink. The breeze carried salt and promise. She thought of how a morning filled with fear and misunderstanding had led to days of conversation, workshops, and art. She thought of Officer Carter, now volunteering at the community center, learning to listen. She thought of Officer Brooks, who still searched for honest work, but had begun helping at a food bank, determined to show kindness one plate at a time. She felt grateful for every step they took toward respect. At the senior center, she was greeted by soft laughter and gentle chatter. Elderly people sat at tables with blank canvases and brushes. Tables held jars of paint in every color. Maria set her bag down and smiled at the art therapist, a kind woman named Sophia. "Thank you for letting me join today," Maria said softly. Sophia nodded. Together, they guided the seniors to choose colors and themes. Maria knelt beside an old man with white hair, his eyes bright with curiosity. "What will you paint today?" she asked. He studied the blank canvas for a long moment, then dipped his brush in green and began a slow sweep. He painted a tree. Its roots dug deep, its branches reached high. Maria watched, her heart warm. "Your tree has strength," she said. "Tss." Man nodded, his eyes shining. "I needed that," he said. Around the room, the seniors painted memories, a childhood home, a field of sunflowers, a calm sea at dusk. Some painted hands holding each other, some painted birds flying free. Maria moved from table to table, offering praise and gentle questions. She heard stories of young days, of first loves, of battles fought, and lessons learned. Each story added color to the room. She felt the same energy she had felt months ago in the youth center, art as a bridge between lives. After an hour, Sophia invited everyone to share their paintings. The seniors each spoke a few words about their work. When it was Maria's turn, Sophia said, "This is Maria Torres de la Vega, who brings art and hope to all our neighbors." Applause filled the room. Maria stood and spoke in a clear voice. "Art teaches us to look closer," she said. "It teaches us to see each other's stories. Today I see strength in every brushstroke." She looked at the tree painting. "This tree reminds me of our city. Our roots hold us together. Our branches reach for a kinder future." The seniors nodded and smiled. Later, Maria walked into a small library room in the senior center. Had brought a folder of children's paintings and police portraits from the youth center's workshops. She pinned them to a corkboard. Each painting told a chapter: the first morning of fear, the press conference, the city hall meeting, the art show with officers and children, the community dinner, and the mural unveiling. She wanted the seniors to see the journey. Finished, she stepped back and looked at the board. The colors told a story of pain turned to change. She felt tears of gratitude. She knew that every person in this room had lived a piece of that story in their own way. In the afternoon, Maria returned to her home. She entered the foyer where the children's paintings still hung. She ran her finger over a bright sunflower painted by a little girl. She thought of how small acts, giving a paintbrush, listening with care could ripple outward. To her desk, and sat down to write letters. She wrote to the mayor, thanking her for keeping the promise of reform. She wrote to the police commissioner, asking for more art therapy in precincts across the city. She wrote to Officer Carter and Officer Brooks, telling them she believed in their ability to change the world one act of kindness at a time. She wrote to the seniors she had just met, inviting them to join the next youth center art show, too. Paint alongside children and officers. She hoped the generations would learn from one another. That evening, she hosted a small gathering in her garden. Strings of lights hung between trees. Soft music played. On low tables were simple dishes: fresh fruit, bread, cheese, olives. Neighbors, police officers, seniors, and children gathered. The crowd buzzed with gentle conversation. A young boy named Javier tugged at Officer Carter's sleeve. He handed Carter a brush and said, "Will you paint with me?" Carter hesitated, then took the brush. Together, they painted, two hands reaching out. Javier beamed and Carter smiled. Nearby, an elderly woman and a child painted side by side. Their brushes moved in time, and they laughed at each other's color choices. Maria watched, her heart full. She saw years of pain and mistrust dissolve into shared laughter and color. She saw new friendships forming. She felt a deep peace, knowing that the story she had helped begin was alive in every brushstroke, every smile, every apology accepted and given. When the moon was high, Maria stood alone on a small balcony above the garden. She looked down at the gathering. She heard laughter mingled with soft music, saw children dancing, officers chatting with seniors, families hugging. She remembered the morning of handcuffs, the fear, the anger, the confusion. She thought of the courage it took to speak kindly, to stand tall in injustice, to use art as a tool of change. She whispered a thank you to every person whose open heart had made this possible. Before she went inside, she took out her phone and recorded a short message. "Today I saw hope," she said softly. "I saw us come together. I saw trust rebuild. Thank you to every person who chose kindness over fear. Let this be our future." She posted it to social media, not for fame, but so that anyone who saw those words might find courage. Then she slipped back inside and closed the door behind her, in the quiet of her home. Maria sat by the window and read the letters she had written. She saw the words forming paths to understanding. She placed each letter in an envelope and set them by the door. Tomorrow, her driver would deliver them. She stood and walked to the painting wall in her foyer. She reached out and touched the bright globe surrounded by children's hands. She breathed deeply and felt gratitude for every moment that had brought her here. Finally, she climbed the stairs to her bedroom and lay down. She thought of the roots of the tree, the hands holding each other, and the sun with open arms. Thought of how art, honesty, and kindness had rewritten a painful morning into a story of unity. She closed her eyes and smiled, ready to dream of new days where every brushstroke could heal a wound, and every person could see each other as human first. With that comforting thought, she drifted into a peaceful sleep, knowing that the ripples of her courage would continue to grow,